Hello, my name is John. I'm a conservative strategist consultant here in Ontario. I'm going to be doing YouTube updates throughout the election on various things that interest me. Today, what it is that I'm really interested in is Mike Myers, and I was thinking about this a lot today. But I don't know if anybody remembers, but when Kamala Harris, took over from Joe Biden, um, what ended up happening is everybody in Hollywood was rejoicing, and it seemed like she was unbeatable. She was rising in the polls. And Ben Stiller came out and said, isn't this exciting? I'm so excited. It's excitement's in the air, and it's just change is happening, right? And at that point, it seemed like Trump was toast, to be honest. If you were a normal person in the public just observing, because you'd think, well, look at all this momentum. Hollywood's involved. And this Mark Carney situation with Mike Myers reminds me of the exact same thing. He's taken over from Trudeau and he's getting a bump in the polling, and all of a sudden now he's relying on guys in their 60s and 70s to come out and rah and try to move the needle. And then the media says, well, Mike Myers, what could go wrong, right? And it's just comical to me how in this country we can't even remember like 4 months ago. It used to be that, sometimes things would happen in politics and then for a decade everybody would remember it. And they would say like, oh, don't remember what happened to John Kerry, or oh, remember Michael Ignatieff. When an American comes up from Harvard and tries to be the prime minister, Canadians don't take kindly to that. They like people that live here often. We've forgotten a lot of that stuff. That's why Mark Carney reminds me also of the modern day Michael Ignatieff. He sort of just popped into existence, back into Canada, back into Canadian existence, right in time for an election to take over after somebody had been around for a while. Paul Martin was in between Chrétien and Ignatieff's run, but it's eerily similar. Back then we needed an intellectual from Harvard, somebody that was smarter than Stephen Harper. He knew more about, Harvard type of stuff. So that's what we needed back then. Now, his campaign didn't rely on Donald Trump's tariffs to also get him elected. But with Ignatieff, it's the same type of thing as what I see with Mark Carney. It's an opportunist. But speaking of opportunists, there's another point here is liberals for a decade, when the woke movement was rising, declared that hockey was basically for cavemen, and it was toxic and it was too masculine, and Don Cherry needed to be fired and all the toughness needed it to be taken out of the game. And Donald Trump and his tariffs have totally flipped them around, and now they want to be like Gordie Howe. They want to play dirty in the corners with their elbows up, and they love hockey. They can't show Canadians enough hockey. Here's Mark Carney. He's an Edmonton Oiler. He always knew he would make the show, as he said, right? Such a tacky... Nobody's called baseball even the show anymore. Like, these are outdated cliches, right? That's Mark Carney trying to get to the youth that are actually like 40 years old, guys that are my age, right? The show, you can say but it's just, to me it was so cliche and so obvious, and that's basically where we're at right now. They're grasping at straws. They're running the same campaign that Harris ran, and it didn't work for her, and it won't work for Carney, because ultimately Canadians will see through this election that this is about leadership on a multitude of issues in a multitude of provinces. The media likes to boil everything down into something that they can talk about in 5 minutes. So it's obviously tariffs, and they've said it 100 times. That's the only thing that matters is tariffs. What about housing costs? What does the price of housing have to do with tariffs, other than it's going to increase, right? Obviously, but that's not the problem. Housing costs are not going to increase massively because of tariffs. They've increased because of mismanagement in the economy in the last decade from people like Mark Carney, people that are more interested in using Canada as a labor force than a place to live. And now he's back to sort of finish the job. I just think that Canadians are smarter than this. I think that they'll see through what he's trying to push, and a lot of it, I think, just won't stick. I think Mike Myers' endorsement is fine. I don't have a problem with Mike Myers. I grew up watching his movies, but just like I watch Ben Stiller's movies, and I continue to. But I just don't think that it moves the needle as much as everybody wants it to. This is about the economy. And people, if you look at Pierre's rally last night, he had 2,500 people, I believe, and I think Mark Carney had 300. That's in Toronto for Pierre. and he had very little protesters outside. Carney had a ton of protesters outside of his. So if you actually look at the boots on the ground type of situation, the Conservatives are destroying them. Yeah, the Liberals have always had an advantage with, I guess, like a sort of a higher level game of the media. So what I would consider to be like an air force almost, because the Conservatives have the actual troops of people online and showing up to events and spreading the message in the grassroots. The Liberals rely on high tactical precision from a lot of their journalists. So you'll see things like the same people that told you that when the 30 MPs wanted to push Trudeau out on CBC, David Cochrane, he said, "Oh, for me, this is nothing. This is only 30 MPs. This isn't a big deal. Trudeau will be fine. For me, it's put up or shut up time. Like, what are 30 MPs out of 100?" And now he's on there going, Mark Carney's the only guy, basically. This is 100% a tariff election. So the same people that told you that, all the rabble-rousing about Trudeau was nonsense are still trying to lead people through the truth, right? And it's just more propaganda. More propaganda that helps the Liberals and helps their narrative. That's exactly what they're designed to do. So Mike Myers, Ben Stiller, these are high-level coordinated attacks from the media. There's no coincidence that Mike Myers is on doing the media. He was requested. And I'm sure in Hollywood it helps his career. I'm sure standing up to Trump with a little Mr. Canada cape has opened up a lot of doors. And that's what those guys are primarily about, be honest. That's what Mike Myers is about. He's not about politics. If he was about politics, he'd be in politics, right? Or he'd be making political comedy or political movies. Never. Wayne's World, Austin Powers, nothing to do with politics. So he's not a political voice ever, but he is now. I'm sure it's to help his career. If it was going to harm his career, if he was a Poilievre supporter, I guarantee you he'd be quiet because he'd say, I don't want that. And that's the difference between why everybody gets to speak up for Hollywood when they're Liberals, and it looks like, well, everybody's on board. You could almost assume everybody who's silent is a Conservative. So when you see Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro, everybody else, if they're not saying it, then they're probably Conservative, because it's a great Hollywood maneuver to be a Liberal. Like a card-carrying Liberal is basically like a Screen Actors Guild card. So it's a double whammy. I'm a Liberal and I'm a Hollywood guy. Love me. And that's what they're all about. So when they know it's the opposite, they don't. So that's why the public gets hoodwinked a bit, and they think, "Wow, everybody's a conservative or everybody's a Liberal. Look at all of Hollywood." And that's not true. There's a lot of actors in Hollywood that are tired of, especially if you didn't get a role because of it, right? Or if you think that you were slighted because of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in Hollywood. Then and actors they don't take much to get slighted, right? Like a lot of them will invent situations with their agents and the producers that haven't even happened, right? So if you start giving them an obvious situation where a role for a movie is basically handed out based on diversity, they got access to grind. And for them, their whole life is about roles. It's not about politics. They'll do the politics to get the role. And as they get older, they get a little bit more loose with it. But, Rosie O'Donnell doesn't have much input when she's going to flee the country. And I don't know if she's leaving and she's on a big media tour in Ireland, but it's the same thing. Like, these celebrities have to understand that people are looking at the economy. They don't look for celebrities for advice on politics. The only people that are going to get moved by the Mike Myers needle are Liberals that are already boomers. That's why they're talking about Mr. Dress Up and everything. And it's basically trying to move the needle with people that want to feel good about what they're doing. So it's like, well, I don't know, maybe Mark Carney. Well, let's put him beside Mike Myers. He's a very funny guy, and everybody likes Mike Myers. So now it's okay. What you're doing is okay. That's all. That's the only needle that's going to move. There's nobody waking up this morning going, Mike Myers. Just like Wayne Gretzky. Nobody. How many people in Canada are voting for Per Poilievre because of Wayne Gretzky? None. How many Americans voted in Trump because of Hulk Hogan or Kid Rock? These are stories the media likes because they don't understand politics. If they wanted to be in politics, they'd be actually involved in it, right? Instead of kind of talking about it from the outside, like a gossiper. So that's basically where we're at. There's no shortage of celebrities that'll come out and singers, and I'm sure Jan Arden's a big Mark Carney guy as well. Um, you know, I don't know anybody else that I could think of. I mean, Neil Young, same thing, right? He almost got rid of Joe Rogan. Remember that? Remember when Neil Young wasn't going to go on Spotify unless they got rid of Joe Rogan? This is the kind of stuff that we're pretending is reality, right? Sorry to say, Mike Myers is still a fan, but should stay out of politics. That's always the best thing for Hollywood people.